Tired of bloating, fatigue and sluggish digestion? Meet your gut's new best friend, NutriHealth 365's microbiome supplement. Restore balance, boost immunity, and feel amazing from the inside out. Smart delay release capsules. Real results. Gut health just got personal.
Freedom of speech or not? Well, depends who's saying it, apparently. Donald Trump's in the UK for a second state visit, and a massive AI investment deal between the US and UK is signed. Is that what Keir Starmer meant when he said injecting AI into the veins of the population of this country? We'll find out. That plus more on today's Trending. Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday and welcome to Trending, brought to you now by NutriHealth 365. If you want to check out what those guys have to offer, click on the link in the description. We're really happy to be working with them. Well, one thing that's not particularly great is the weather has finally turned here in the UK this morning. It's absolutely grim. Right, we're going to start today's episode with what I think is one of the most important topics to come out of the last week. It's Wednesday now. We're closing in on a week this evening since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and there's been a lot of fallout from that in a number of different ways. And one of the things that I think is very important to highlight here has been the reaction of everyone, really, the reaction on both sides. Now, I think there's a clear divide in the world, a clear divide more so in America because it's one of the most politicized countries in the world. Even the judiciary, for example, has a Republican or a Democrat assigned to the person. So it's certainly a very politicized country, and as a result, there's a huge divide, which is obviously going to be the case. You're going to always end up in a situation where one side's happy, one side's not. That's politics, unfortunately. And we have the same in this country with the first past the post system. 9 million people voted for Keir Starmer. That means 60 odd million didn't. So you've got a few happy and a few not. And I'd suggest even the few that were happy initially that he won are probably not very happy now. But what this is leading to is it's leading to an even bigger divide between people, families, workplaces, sports teams, broadcasters, whatever you want to say. It's caused a huge divide between many. And what I've noticed in the last week is a lot of behaviour that when the left, for want of playing this right-left game, when the left were in power and the left were doing certain things like cancelling conservative voices, like boycotting conservative things, they were censoring them and so on. They were calling for cancel culture, and we have seen a lot of cancel culture in the last few years. When the left were doing that, the right were calling it out, saying how bad it was, saying we need freedom of speech. The First Amendment in America, it's the very bedrock of any civilized, open, democratic society. It has to be the right to offend. It has to be the right to articulate how you feel. Now, all of a sudden, the right are in power, and we're seeing the left being called Nazis, being used the same terminology, the left being cancelled in many ways. You're seeing exactly the same behaviour from the right that they complained about when the left was doing it. And I want to start today's episode with this simple tweet, which we'll put on the screen here, which was from the late Charlie Kirk. Hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech, and all of it is protected under the First Amendment. Keep America free. So when you read that, and then you look at some of the things that have been said by conservative commentators, by conservative influencers in the last few days, it really does, they don't get the irony there, do they? Because after the assassination of a man who, you may agree, you may disagree with much of what Charlie Kirk had to say. I agree with some and disagree with others. He was somebody who relentlessly did say freedom of speech should mean freedom of speech to say and do pretty much everything. He was over here in the UK a few weeks ago and did an interview on GB News, if I remember correctly, where he was talking about the freedom of speech and even down to the extremes of it, of inciting violence, that in America it's very different. The inciting violence law here is basically just saying, I think we should go and kill these people. Whereas in America, it's names, dates, places. It's I think we should go to this place at this time to target this person on this day. It's much more specific. But anyway, the point I'm making is that he was very much an advocate for any speech should be allowed to be said. And I look at it from this perspective. I agree, because one of the most dangerous things is not knowing where people stand when it comes to certain things. For example, if there's a racist in your school, would you like to know who it is? I think you probably would. If there's a sexist in your school, would you like to know who it is? If there's somebody with a psychopathic mindset that will definitely harm people, wouldn't you like to know who that is? Well, I certainly would. And by giving people freedom of speech, it's the freedom of speech to expose yourself as either an idiot, a moron, or a psychopath, or somebody who is dangerous. So I actually think freedom of speech is fundamentally important to well, firstly, a fair and open society where everybody is heard, but also it's for the benefit of everyone, even when people are saying things that you don't like, because at least you know where they stand, and therefore you know where you stand. Now, a lot of people will argue that you have freedom of speech, absolutely, but you shouldn't have the freedom to have no consequences for your speech. And I do understand that. I understand that principle. Where my problem is here has been conservative voices like Matt Walsh being the one I'm going to pick on a little bit this morning, who has been very open and very upfront about the fact that anybody that has celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk should be cancelled. He's made lots of tweets about the fact that he has contacted employers and people around him have contacted employers to get people who have tweeted certain things fired. And we're going to have a look at some of these things here. So there's this one here. It's good that these people lose their jobs. It's good that they are shamed and humiliated and must live with the repercussions for the rest of their lives. It is good that they had to wake up every day until they die wishing they hadn't said what they said. Right, okay. To me, that's an absolute extreme. Do I agree with what this girl has said here? This nurse who has said some horrendous things about Charlie Kirk. You know, he has kids, fuck his ancestors, especially his what ex. Absolutely abhorrent, vile comments. But what that woman has done there is she's exposed herself as somebody who says and thinks absolutely abhorrent and vile things. So she's got to live with that, whether there's any repercussions of that or not, because the people around her, people that she worked with or doesn't work anymore, her family, her friends, they're all going to know that that's in her, that she's got that mindset. That's something you've got to live with anyway. I don't then believe that you should then lose the right to potentially pay for your own children, pay for a roof over your head, because you said something like that. I don't believe that's right. Because for a very simple reason. We have all said things over the years, I'm not going to sit here and say I've said anything as evil and as abhorrent as that, but we've all said things over the years that if we had the chance again, we would probably say slightly differently. Whether that's tweets, whether that's ways we've spoken to friends, to partners, to parents, to children, we would all have that opportunity again. We would probably react slightly differently. Maybe we reacted with anger, maybe we reacted with emotion, maybe we reacted with, an immediate response rather than, calmly thinking about something. Maybe we didn't think about the effect of our words on others, which generally something that comes with hindsight. Are you telling me that you think you should be punished for the rest of your life for anything you may have said that you could have said better? Anything that you may have said that you'll take back? And here's the irony of it. The same people that will be calling for the cancellation and the censorship and the losing of jobs and therefore the losing of ability to pay their bills of these people will be the same people that just a month ago were shouting from the rooftops about how the imprisonment of Lucy Connolly was wrong. The same people. And if you actually want to strip it back, Lucy Connolly, technically, you could argue incited violence to a degree. You can't argue that these people did. You cannot argue that what they said was right. What they said was absolutely evil and ridiculous, and they're idiots. But how does one work and not the other? This is where the hypocrisy comes in. And this is where it's so important. We've spoken about it already this week. Gareth's mentioned it as well. Is that you have to be bigger than the other person. Otherwise, nothing's ever going to evolve. Nothing's ever going to get better. At some point, you have to go, okay, let's just be the adults in the room. What these people have said is absolutely ridiculous. And what they are doing by saying and tweeting and speaking these things is exposing themselves as being absolutely ridiculous, exposing themselves as being completely void of any empathy. That's a hell of a thing for them to live with. And also what that's going to do, nobody with any right mind is looking at the tweets of people like this, looking at the words of people like Bob Villan on stage going, yeah, I agree that, yeah, absolutely. Those people look really credible people for me to follow and for me to get behind. They look like really lovely people. No one's doing that. They're looking at them and going, what a bunch of morons, what a bunch of heartless, senseless prats. And then you move on and you get on with your life. They're exposing themselves by doing to them exactly what they have done to you, and their side, for want of a better term, have done to you. That makes you no better than them. It's absolutely ridiculous. But here's a tweet from a guy called Eric Doherty, who's another conservative influencer in America, describing this video from Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh flawlessly explains how the right wing getting people fired for celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk is not the same as the left's cancel culture. The left will cancel you for saying something that's true, and the right cancels you for saying something abhorrent. But freedom of speech is the right to offend. Freedom of speech is the right to say something that is going to cause outrage. That is what freedom of speech is. If you only have the freedom to say things that are not going to cause offence and not going to cause outrage, then how does that make any sense? That's not freedom of speech. Because if you want to strip it back, people getting offended by someone like Charlie saying there's only two genders, for example, to that person, they may genuinely believe that is false. They may genuinely believe, because they have been brainwashed and programmed by this whole trans movement, that there is 100 odd genders or whatever. So that person is going to get offended by that. Okay. On the flip side, somebody saying that they're glad that Charlie Kirk's not here anymore, well, they may genuinely believe that as well. Both of them are wrong, because there's only two genders, and celebrating someone's death is absolutely insane. However, you can't pick and choose when it comes to what you support. You have freedom of speech or you don't. There's not really a middle ground. Because the problem is, when you have a middle ground and you define hate speech, who defines what hate is? And the joke is, these are the conversations that were had by the right just a few months ago. Who defines what hate is? Well, the state. Well, in that case, then you're giving more power away to the state, which apparently is not what the right wants. But this is where we fall apart, because people lose their sense of dignity, really, when they think their side are winning. They lose their sense of, ability to look and go, actually, let me look at this dispassionately. Let me look at all the nuances before making a decision on what's right or wrong here. They just blindly believe it. I spoke about this on Monday, how people were very quick to blindly believe that this was a left-wing trans ideological shooter because it fit their narrative. They ignore the fact that so much of the evidence suggests the exact opposite. It fits my narrative, so I'm going to blindly believe it. People that used to actually claim to question the system. Alex Jones used to apparently talk about the deep state and all of their explosives. Now, within minutes of a tweet or a video, he's reposting the FBI like it's gospel. That's what has happened. That's what we've become. And when I've seen these over the last few days, these guys, Laura Loomer, another one, calling for violence and calling for, hatred against your enemies. They're not our enemies. They're not our enemies. We are one human family with a lot of dysfunctional problems. Yes, absolutely. But what family doesn't have dysfunctional issues? What family seamlessly works without problems? Very few. I can speak as most people can. But you don't hate somebody. hating, what you hate you become, what you fight you become. These are really old quotes that are still applicable today. And when I've been reading all of these things, it's made me think of a very famous quote from a guy called Joseph Goebbels, who was a Nazi propaganda minister. And one of his quotes that he was attributed is, "Accuse the other side of that which you are guilty," which obviously in the wartime was there to cover up actions of the Nazis, supposedly, by accusing the other side of exactly what they were doing. Because people then would connect and go, well, they won't be doing that. They're accusing the other side of it. It's a deflection technique, essentially. Well, I think you can apply that to what I've just explained here. Because you're accusing the left of cancel culture. You're accusing the left of wanting to silence debate. On the same day, there'll be tweets from these people going, you killed Charlie Kirk because you didn't like his opinions, and all he did was try and debate you, and you killed him for it. Well, okay. But then on the flip side, you think it's okay to silence people that have a different opinion to you. Do you not understand the hypocrisy there? Do you not understand the madness of that? You either believe in freedom of speech or you don't. You can't sit there and claim to be a freedom of speech absolutist and the First Amendment is the bedrock of American society, and without it, we'll end up living in a tyranny. You can't sit there and say that and then boast that you're getting people fired from their jobs for their opinions that are different to yours. I really can't grasp how people are not seeing the irony of that. It's absolute madness. Now, if it comes down to, a specific employer, for example, let's say here at Iconic, if somebody that was here had said something that was so abhorrent that it clearly exposed their character as a deeply, deeply unpleasant individual, and it's something I saw and I wanted to sit down and have a conversation with them about it, and then you'd have that discussion of, do I want somebody with that mindset in my team? That's a very different scenario to people with large accounts online actively phoning round employers, pressuring them, threatening them, bullying them into firing individuals, threatening employers with exposure on social media. If you don't fire this person for what they said, we're going to expose your company, your restaurant, your builders, whatever it might be. What are you doing when you're doing that? You're being the bullies that you are claiming and have claimed for years that the left are. At what point are the adults going to enter the room? This is not party politics. This is not about right, left. This is about good versus evil. This is about right and wrong. And if you look at this from every single perspective, there's right and wrong across the board, probably on every side, on every single issue, on every single debate. No one is right about everything. No one is wrong about everything, most of the time. You don't delete cancel culture from the left by imposing it when you're in power from the right. That even that sentence being said out loud is insane. Cancel culture and stopping people from earning a living, stopping people from being able to pay their bills, look after their kids, put food on the table, keep a roof over their heads, all of those things, because of an opinion, that's disgraceful. And you know what? Do you know who would have been one of the first people to agree with me on that 6 months ago? Matt Walsh, Laura Loomer, all of those. And now all of a sudden, their side are in power, they think they're winning, and they've just reversed exactly what they've accused the left of for all these years, and now it's okay because they're doing it. Again, do you not get the hypocrisy and you not see the irony and the madness of that? And this is where we need to get back as well. This is a really, really key point. This is the final comment I'm going to make on this before we move on. This whole concept of winning. Now, I'm a highly competitive person. Ask anyone. When it comes to sports, when it comes to individual things, I love to win. But that's very different to feeling like you have to win in politics, feeling like your side is in power in any form of governance. Because when you have a political election, particularly when you have the presidency format in America and when you have first past the post system here in Britain, you're always going to end up in a situation when the person who wins didn't necessarily get the most votes. And what I mean by that is Donald Trump won the first election in 2016 with around 26% of the overall vote of America in terms of every single registered voter. So 3/4 of the country didn't vote for Donald Trump. Now, the biggest vote share in that election was, I think, 47%, which was people that didn't vote. So therefore, 3/4 of the country did not vote for the man in power. You apply that then to this in the UK. As I said, around 9 million people voted for the Labour Party and therefore voted for Starmer, which I think is, again, around 20% of the popular vote of people that could have voted. Of people that could have voted, essentially, yeah. So again, 80% of the country didn't vote for him to be in position of power. So 80% of the country are unhappy. A large percentage of that 80%, in the same way a large percentage of that 3/4 in America would have voted for other people or didn't vote at all. So you're winning how? Because based on those numbers I've just described, you've got a completely divided society because the vast majority of people in the country didn't vote for the person in a position of power. So how are you going to have a harmonious and unified country where everyone gets on, everyone's working together towards the same goal of increasing the prosperity and lifestyle and life standards of that country? You're not going to have that because a lot of the policies, if not all of the policies that are put forward by these leaders, were not voted for, were not supported by the population that those policies are being imposed upon. So how is that going to be conducive to a unified society? It's not. As I said at the top of the show, in America you have one of the most politicized countries in the world where it's right versus left, Democrats versus Republicans. So at all times, through the Bush years, you had the Democrats not happy, half the country. Through the Obama years, you had half the country and the Republicans not happy. And now you've got half the country, or less than half the country, the MAGA, happy, and you've got the rest unhappy. How is that going to create a society of harmony? It's not. And that's the problem with the whole we are winning attitude. For me, a society is winning when everyone within it respects the views and opinions of everyone else. The governments and people in positions of authority in those countries work on behalf of the people that put them there, not the global conglomerates, the banks, the corporations, the multinational entities. They work on behalf of the people that put them there. The politicians themselves from various different parties respect each other and the right for them to represent the people that put them there, and they will have different opinions and exchanges of agreement. That's when I'll think a society is winning. When every single vote counts, every single voice is heard, and as a result, you reach a point where people feel respected. And, there's a lot of talk in the UK, I'm not going to go too much into it, about the voting system being broken, and it is, because in the first past the post system we have today, every vote doesn't count. It doesn't matter, really. If you live in an area that is predominantly a Labour voter hold, it doesn't matter if you vote Tory, your vote doesn't count, because Labour will win that seat and the popular vote, the overall vote, is irrelevant. If you had a proportional representation system where you divided the number of people in the country that can vote by the number of MPs and come out with a number, let's say hypothetically it's 100,000, for every 100,000 votes, whatever party gets, they get an MP, all of a sudden then Westminster would look completely different. I can tell you one thing, there would never be a majority again. You would never have a situation where with a very, very small mandate of votes, one party is allowed to dominate, which is what we're seeing right now. So therefore, it would be slower progress in the sense of people wouldn't be able to get things through very quickly. So the status quo, you wouldn't be able to change society and transform the country very quickly. You couldn't do that. It would have to be a situation where the different sides respected each other and had to work together, just like we should be doing as a human race, just like we should be doing as a population. We don't have to agree on everything. We're not going to. but we can agree on the fact that most of us just want the same thing, which is to live in peace, live in harmony, have a bit more money in our pocket than we had yesterday, take care of our kids, give our kids a better life than we've had, have our health, travel maybe, see a bit of the world, and build a family and have a job. Really, most people don't desire the 1% ridiculous lifestyles that we're told we should aspire to. I certainly don't. I just want to live in a world where I can raise my family, I can grow up knowing my kids are going to be safe, I can leave this world one day knowing that my kids are going to be safe and have an opportunity to live a life better than I have, and that we have respect and we have the ability to take care of the vulnerable and that we have the ability to look after each other. That's all I want. And I'd say that's all the vast majority want. And that's not going to happen if you keep this attitude of we're winning. Because if you're winning, what does that mean on the flip side? It means somebody else is losing. How does that work? You can apply that to anything. If you're in a marriage and you're constantly the one that's winning every argument, who are you going to live with very quickly? You're going to live with a defeated person. Is that going to be a healthy marriage? If you're in a workplace where you constantly lambast your staff, where you constantly abuse people who are lower down than you, is that going to be good for a harmonious and prosperous workplace? No, it's not. I was taught, and I'm just going to finish on this, I was taught in during my economics qualification all those years ago, the best part of, feels like forever ago, but best part of 15 years ago now, that if you leave a negotiation with one side happy, one side miserable, that's the end. Those people will never work together again. You need to reach a point where both sides are content. Maybe I've had to concede some ground, maybe you have, but we've reached a point where I can live with what I'm walking away with, and so can you. That's what I've just described. We all may think differently. We all may have different ways that we believe things should work. But by me imposing my will on you, or you imposing your will on me, how's that going to mean we work together? It's not. Maybe I make a point that you might agree with. Maybe you make a point that might make me think slightly differently. And between us, we might get somewhere to a point that we're both content and we can both start to move forward and work together. That's the only way that this changes. And this mindset of I'm winning, I'm going to cancel you when I'm in power, but I'm going to be outraged if you try and cancel me when you are, all that's going to do is lead to more division. And I didn't know Charlie Kirk, but based on that tweet I read out right at the top, I think he would be quite disgusted actually in a lot of what we've seen in the last week in his name that people are doing. So hopefully that's given you a different perspective on what we're seeing at the moment. We're going to move on the iconic version and talk about the Trump state visit to the UK, which just started last night, and a couple of things related to that. If you want to click the link in the description, head over to iconic.com. You can watch the whole episode for free, and if you like what you see, sign up for $1.99 for your first month. Thousands and thousands of hours of content on there, and brand new videos added every single day, from political commentary like this down to deep esoteric research, feature films and entertainment as well. So if you're interested, head over to iconic.com and watch the rest of the episode. Thank you as always to NutriHealth 365 for sponsoring the program, and I'll be back with you tomorrow morning I won't be back with you tomorrow morning. Gareth will be back with you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. See you then.